All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Wanted to thank everyone for attending this morning's presentation of Destiny Profiler. We have Steve Loneman here with us from LaChase Construction, and he was actually here in the very early days before Profiler was even commercially available. So he's going to give us a look at one of his projects he did recently. I do want to let you all know that you will be on mute during the presentation, but please feel free to type in questions as they come in, and we will get to them after the presentation. With that, Steve, I'll go ahead and let you take it away.
Thanks, Holly. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Power of Destiny Profiler, providing clarity and confidence. I'm Steve Loneman with LaChase Construction. Our agenda for today is going to be, I'll give you a little bit of our company overview, tell you a little about our company and its history. We'll talk about the project itself, some of its specific statistics and that sort of thing. And then I'll walk through the solution that we provided using Destiny Profiler and talk about the results, and then finish up with some questions. First and foremost, our company is LaChase Construction. We are a multi-service construction company headquartered in Rochester, New York, founded in 1944. We have 8 offices across New York, primarily upstate New York area, not in the city. And I'm in the Durham, North Carolina office, heading up our southeast region for pre-construction. And our revenue is about $700 million, and we're an ENR Top 100 company. I think it's worth noting that part of the growth in the company in the southeast here was because LaChase acquired the offices of Lend-Lease in the Carolinas and upstate New York in June of this year. And so I came from that legacy Lend-Lease activity, and project I'm going to present is a project that we started as Lend-Lease and then moved over to the LaChase business. The project we're going to talk about today is a municipal project. It's a public safety type of facility located in Durham, North Carolina. The building itself is 125,000 square feet today with a 450-car precast parking garage on a 4.5 acre site in downtown Durham. The issue that we're faced with on this project is that the project was very controversial because of the nature of the project and the size of the project for the city. It's the largest CM at risk project that the city has taken on, and it represented a huge portion of their capital investments for a number of years within the city. So the initial program that started a number of years ago was a 150,000 square foot building, a 400-car parking garage with a $44 million construction budget, or about $290 per square foot of total building area. By the time we got around to us being selected and starting into the construction process, the program had grown to 162,000 square feet. The garage had grown to 450 cars, and the budget remained the same, bringing the cost per square foot available down to $266 a square foot. The bigger issue in all this is when we were first selected to be the CM on the project, the design team had major concerns that the project would not fit, their program would not fit within the budget. And so they wanted to get us on board and get us looking at the estimate and looking at the project right away. Another thing complicating the issue here was that a cost consultant was used during the programming stage to produce a detailed estimate. Had a number of line items, but the budget developed by them was based on a program only. No test fits or visuals were done to test their budget, and we quickly realized that a number of the assumptions utilized to build that budget were not reasonable and not appropriate for this type of facility. So what do? We looked at Profiler for the solution, and I'm going to go through a little bit about what our solution that we came up with was to solve the problem in front of us. First off, the documents at that time that were available were some test fit block diagrams from the design team that fit the site. A very extensive program was available. The budget that we would be presenting, we knew would be highly scrutinized, not only by public interest groups and other public entities, but also by city council, the city management, and others. So we needed to make sure that our product that we presented was very believable and really conveyed the information to an audience that was not just construction and design professionals, but could be city officials, could be residents of the community. So it was very important that what we presented would be easily understood. So I chose to use a picture in lieu of an estimate detail to show that conciseness and that ability to understand the budget in a visual form, and also knowing that us just throwing a bunch of estimate line items up against a competing list of estimate line items wouldn't really get the essence of where the problem lies, and wouldn't get most folks to understand the bigger problem in a short period of time. So we brought in and started using Destiny Profiler on the project. So let's start with some of the documents we had at the time. We started with these test fit layout of the building. On the left-hand side, you'll see the main building, which is the 125,000 square foot facility. On the right is the parking garage, and what you see there in yellow is areas on the site that they dedicated to future development around this facility. The process of getting these test fits approved and through the public and the city was a 6-month affair, and so getting to this point, this is where we started, but also ended up where we finished for the most part. This was a major endeavor and really important to get this right. So this is another view of the project, showing some of the bounding streets in the area, as well as the parking area and the service court area between the building and the garage. Here's a plan view that we were provided. More of the plan view with dimensioning, just to give you some background of what we used to produce the model. And so from that, we produced an early block model. This was the early version of the model I produced, utilizing just really the backgrounds that were shown on the drawings, and then further developed it to focus in on how do we, does it have the 162,000 square feet that they envisioned it to have? And one of the interesting things that Profiler provided to us was that I figured out very, very early that the building wasn't going to fit on the site. And so you see on this plan view where I had to extend a section of the building into the street to make the square footage work that was in the program. So kind of a twofold benefit here. It not only giving us a visual of the estimate, but it also gave us some insight into the idea that the test fit probably wasn't as accurate as it could have been and needed to be. More visuals of the model that was produced. See once again the garage on your right, the headquarters facility on the left, and it's bounded by streets on all sides. Another view of the same model, and a very good image showing how we had to extend into the street to make the fit work on the site. More of the same. What we did for actually producing the model, I used a core and shell approach to the project. Did a core and shell model for the main building and for the garage. And then on the interior side, I just modeled the core and shell elements of the stairs, the elevators, the lobby, and the restrooms. And so that's what you see in this wire diagram that showed the core and shell elements. And then for the interiors, put the program information into our Profiler estimate and produced dollars per square foot based on the interiors to produce the final resultant of the estimate. At the end of the day, our cost model came in at $57 million. Keep in mind our original budget was $44 million, so we had in fact confirmed that we have a big problem. Actually a 30% budget issue, which everyone was very aware that would not be overcome by just value engineering this thing. We had to rethink the project a bit, and maybe even rethink the budget a bit. And as you see at the bottom of the page, our cost of the project all in on our cost model was about $354 per square foot of building area across the utility project. So where do we go from here? The first thing we did is we looked to do some benchmarking on the project. Strangely enough, for as long as the project was under planning, no one had done a benchmarking study, either from the owner side or from the programming group side, or even the cost consultant they brought on. So we conducted a benchmarking study to take a look to see what should these buildings cost across the country. And so we're able to find a number of projects in varying locations done at really probably in the last 5 years or so that were relevant to what we were doing. And so we benchmarked those projects. We put them in our city, in our time frame, and the resultants are what you see here. You see a varying degree of project sizes and dollars per square foot, and we also had visuals that went with these so that the customer and the team can understand what a building of that magnitude looks like. And at the end of the day, our cost model budget was $357 a square foot. The original budget was $266, and our benchmarking average was $353 a square foot. And also the median was $357, which was right on where our cost model done in Profiler was at. So what we were able to do is we confirmed that the model itself was accurate in terms of the information provided in it, the square footages of materials, unit pricing, that sort of thing through Profiler, and then further confirmed that it's within where it should be and lines up nearly identically to where we would expect it to be based on benchmarking. So all things are going pretty well at this point in time. So we wanted to talk about the certainty of the product and the outcome. And what I'll go into here a bit is kind of where we went from here. The project underwent some substantial reprogramming. Entire departments were deleted from the program, but we focused in much of that deletion on areas that were non-personnel related. So an evidence storage type of system or type of area was eliminated, which brought the square footage down because they were just paying way too much money on a square foot basis for that kind of utilitarian space. So we redid the program, and through all of this, we utilized the program or the cost model that we produced with Profiler to guide us in our decision making on how to reduce the program. And throughout the pre-construction phase, we continually went back to the Profiler model to look at what we had for skin areas and percentages as well as dollars, and use that as our guide to help us design the new building to fit those parameters that we'd have cost certainty. And through all of that, what we ended up with was the owner came up on their budget a bit to $49.3 million, and our final GMP number came in at $47.3 million, about $2 million under. And so a little bit of that difference is related to we pushed some work off to city through their other programs to deal with the street issues and utilities, that sort of thing. So the actual delta between the budget and the final GMP were much closer than that $2 million. I think it's important to note that this budget, at $57 million, it could not have gone forward at all. The project was either going to die or we had to find a way to save it. And for it to go forward, it would have created a tax increase for the city and would have stifled their capital investments for a number of years to come. So with the help of Profiler in what we did, we were able to save the project, move it forward, reprogram it in a way that made sense, use Profiler as the basis of our planning as we went forward, and used it as a continual tool to go back to as time went along to make sure that we're staying on track and designing within the parameters that we had established. With that concludes the formal presentation I have. I'd be happy to take any questions at this point in time.
Thank you for that, Steve. If there's any questions, please just feel free to type them in now in the chat window, and I will get to them and read them to Steve and get you some answers. Steve, on this project, how you said it was a 6-month process to get an approval. So how many iterations of this model did you have to go, and what was the process to do all the what if scenarios?
It was 6 months of approval time frame just to get the block model layout approved. The actual pre-construction time frame was about 1.5 years, so it was an extended period of time to get consensus within the city and the various groups involved as to how the site would be used. There was varying opinions on what should be on the site. So that's what took 6 months. Through this, I probably did 15 different variations of the model and pushing and pulling, moving some things around, but really worked from the base model that we had created and did manipulations of that model. Didn't really have to go back and do any further or additional modeling beyond that.
Okay, and then we
and just for information, by the way, the picture you see on the lower left is the final rendering of what the building looked like. A little bit different in that we were able to expand the lobby area to be this glass feature within that budget. So.
Perfect. And then we do have several questions now coming in. So how did you continue to use and update the model as design progressed beyond the concept phase and towards the construction documents?
Once we established the layout of the building that we were going to be using, we stopped the profiler process at that point. That was based on the final model that we, the layout that was approved by the city. And from that, we moved over into our more traditional estimating scenarios, with our estimating systems and formal takeoffs of the actual building. So the succinct answer is we really took it through the conceptual stage only, which is a belief as to how I use Profiler. I know others go much deeper with it, but I really like to use it as a conceptual tool, and then move more into our traditional applications, and then compare back to that model that we created to make sure that we're on track with that cost model.
Okay, and then question coming in around the database. So did you use the database on Profiler to create the estimate, or was Profiler more just used to get the areas and a feel for the layout and look of the building?
I used a database that I've had for a number of years inside Profiler. So I used it for the image as well as the output, and the deliverable that I presented was essentially images that you just saw of our model, backed up with the printouts of the Profiler estimate, integrated into our standard deliverable product. So I use both the estimating side as well as the visual side.
Okay, and then around the database, did it include detailed line items, or was it based per square foot cost?
I have a mix of things in my database. For example, I'll have different kinds of glass on a square foot basis, curtain wall versus storefront, this, that, and the other. Really more conceptually related. I utilized some historical cost and some detail that we had on the MEP side to break it down into, 4 or 5 different line items on those. Drywall and that sort of thing, or interiors were square foot basis for what I was doing here, with the exception of the core elements that I modeled, where I actually put detail to them in terms of, drywall, paint, that sort of thing. But for the most part, high level items, and that's kind of typical of what I've done for conceptual database, whether I was using Profiler or anything else. That's how I would do that.
Okay, and then for the deliverables, were you using Profiler to create your reports?
I did use Profiler reports within my deliverable. I just embedded those into our standard deliverable, but I did use the output from Profiler to produce those.
Okay. And then I believe you did touch on this, but I think he's just wanting some more detail. He's saying it's a great demonstration of how to use the tool to prove that the project had a budget problem, but is just kind of wondering more specifically how the tool was used to bring the project back into budget.
Yeah, absolutely. What we did to do that is the cost model that we produced through Profiler became the basis of everything we developed in the next year or so of pre-construction. So we used a uniform map breakdown across the model, and we'd always go back to the model to look at where are we not only in terms of quantities based on percentage of the building, so floor skin ratios, that kind of thing. We used a lot of that information to develop the formal design going forward. We continually look back at systems cost, whether it be mechanical, electrical, interiors, or really focusing on the skin and what our composition of our total skin cost was, and how do we manipulate that, looking at different products to get back to it. So at the end of the day, we did variations of one model, but really the piece that we really used to plan the project was really more around some of the back end type of information in the model, percentages of skin, as I said, and ratios of glass to hard surface, and really question and each other on the team in terms of you got too much glass in this building, we need to bring it back into line, back towards cost model, and always looking back to that cost model setup and its fundamental square footages and square footage cost to drive our decisions.
Great. I hope that answers your question, but please feel free to type in if you are wanting some more answers. Steve, can you speak to just kind of the adoption of Profiler at LaChase? Are you the only user, or how did y'all kind of just get up and running initially to even do the project with Profiler?
Okay. As Holly mentioned earlier, I was a Beck employee a number of years ago, and so I was around Profiler as it was developed, and before it was ever developed commercially. So I've been around it a lot. When I was at Lend-Lease, we brought it into Lend-Lease with a number of licenses, and really, we adopted a bit here in the Carolinas, but struggled as a company to get broader adoption, and so a number of the licenses really sat idle for more than they should have, and so as we did the transition to LaChase at the middle of 2016, one of the issues I threw out to our Lend-Lease partners at the time was, when we make this split, I want to bring Profiler with me. And so through that negotiation, we were able to bring a couple of seats of Profiler in and start using it here. And so where we're at LaChase with Profiler is very much in its infancy. I'm the primarily the only user here right now, and part of that implementation and part of my implementation strategy of Profiler is it's a great tool, but I really like to use the tool for specific applications like this. This was really the prototypical kind of use of Profiler, where we have block models, not a lot of visual out there where you can influence and compete with design images and upset the design team. So it really works as that cost model tool. And so I really like to use it at that early conceptual stage, and then I pretty much move away from it into more traditional estimating methods after that. So I use it much more limited, so that limits to some degree the advancement, if you will, within the firm, because the situations aren't as numerous to really apply the tool.
Mm-hmm. And then just someone asking how long you've been using it. I know you and I were talking about this beforehand, but it's been well over 10 years, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. And I was telling Holly earlier, I remember back in its inception, before Profiler was even thought through, there was a system called Destiny, hence the Destiny Profiler today, and it was a much more robust kind of integrated design tool. And so it evolved into Profiler. So I've been around Profiler since its inception.
Perfect. And then are you exporting the cost info you're getting into another estimating program?
I'm not. And that's part of the reason why I jump out of Profiler at the end of conceptual and start into more traditional methods, because I'm not aware of a good way to do that export that makes sense. Also, keeping in mind that through the years here, when I first joined Lend-Lease, we were doing Timberline, then MC Squared, then WinEst, and now back over at LaChase, we are now utilizing Timberline again. So that change has not really been helpful in spending the time and setting the time aside to make such an investment to make that automatic. But what I do is within my base estimates that I use for Profiler, I use a download of my production database out of our estimating system, and I make sure I have alignment between the numbering systems and the naming conventions and that sort of thing. So it can invoke my philosophy, the idea that regardless of what tool we might use to do a conceptual estimate, whether it be our base estimating system or Profiler, the output is numbered the same. It's integrated and looks essentially the same regardless of what program you're using or what tool you're using. So we have a consistent product that we're putting forth to our customer.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve, and thank you everyone for these questions. And I think that about wraps up our presentation for today. So thank you, Steve, for presenting, and I hope to get this recording out to all of y'all by the end of the day.
Thank you.